I'm pretty sure by this point I've made my relationship with the Sly Cooper series pretty clear. That being that I'll never stop talking about it, and rather than make anyone interested in trying them out, I'll just push people away from it because I talk about it too much. In all seriousness though, these games are not only some of my favorite games period, but it's hard to believe that this series is already 15 years old when, for the most part, these games haven't aged a day. And I'd fully recommend any game in the series to anyone, even Sly 1, which admittedly suffers from some early installment weirdness. Well, unless you really hate platformers and stealth games, then I probably wouldn't. And because this year marks the 15th anniversary of the series, I wanted to do a little something. And while a review of the first game was on the cards, I decided to do something a bit different. Also because it's a lot easier to do than a full review. So basically what I want to talk about in this video is my dream Sly Cooper game. You can also say that they're my hopes for a possible Sly 5 somewhere down the line, except only sky's the limit for what I can wish for. Really, the only reason why this video isn't called My Hopes for Sly 5 is because that video would probably be a little more realistic in what I would hope for. I'll be looking at each game in the series and taking ingredients for my dream Sly game and what I would like to see done in terms of story, gameplay, and presentation. And in addition, I might even throw in some of my own ideas of what I think would be cool to see in a Sly game. I think that covers about everything, so let's get this show on the road. So let's start off with the story. The stories in Sly Cooper games have never been anything overly special, but since they have their charm and the characters are pretty good, there are a few things I would like to see. This next part will also contain some spoilers, so skip to this time frame if you want to avoid them. If we're talking about a hypothetical Sly 5, then naturally I would like them to continue from the secret ending of Thieves in Time, where Sly gets stranded somewhere that looks a lot like the ancient Egypt. Whether this means I want it to be another time-traveling story with more Cooper ancestors honestly doesn't matter as long as they make it good. And since every Sly game has the structure of collecting something in each episode, Sly 1 with the Pages of Thievius Raccoonus, Sly 2 with the Clockwork parts, Sly 3 with new gang members, and Sly 4 with new ancestors, it would be nice to see this game do something similar as well. As for what it would be, I have no clue, but if it will be another time-traveling story, then probably more ancestors. But I also hope they won't be afraid of breaking the formula on certain occasions, similar to how episode 4 of Sly 2 stops the hunt for the Clockwork parts, or how the gang ends up in the Stone Age to help Bob in Sly 4 by pure coincidence. Though I'd probably prefer something more akin to the former rather than the latter. And personally, I would love to see Clockwork return as the main villain. If the story will revolve around time travel, we could see Clockwork's origin, just how he was able to turn his mortal body robotic, and why he hates the Cooper family so much. And really, I just want to see more Clockwork in general. And on the topic of villains, while I don't have any concrete hopes for what villains should we have, please have each of the villains reside over their own episode. I know that having more than one episode for a villain can help with overall presence, but at the same time it can also make them overstay their welcome, and the episodes themselves might be so familiar that they lack their own identity. And hey, if you really want a villain with overarching presence, again, that's what Clockwork's for. Now, let's talk a little bit about the characters. The past games have mostly focused on Sly and his battle with Clockwork or his legacy, so it would be nice to have Bentley and especially Murray to share some of that spotlight. I mean, Bentley already got a bit of the spotlight in Sly 3, but I'd still want to know more about him, like how he became an orphan, for example. But Murray is definitely the bigger issue here. While he does get some focus during select episodes throughout the series, he's usually left with the role of the lovable muscle and that's it. So I think it's about time our pink hippo friend got into the story's forefront as well. Like Bentley, we could find out how he became an orphan, and in addition give him some sort of personal stake in taking down Clockwork, or just some sort of dilemma during the whole game, similar to Bentley in Sly 3, or even give him a love interest. I don't know, just do something with him! That being said, since he is the main character, Sly shouldn't be ignored either. As for how they should handle his character, well, just keep doing what you've been doing. Sly's charm has always been in his laid-back attitude towards anything, yet taking things seriously enough to get the job done. And as we all know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Though, maybe cut down the jokes a tiny bit from Sly 4. Not saying it was all cringy and try-hard humor which made me question why I liked these games in the first place, but sometimes it just felt like Sly was an unstoppable joke machine that never took anything seriously. It wasn't a problem throughout the whole game, but still something that bothered me a bit. Just stick with the humor from the original trilogy or strike a balance between the two and we should be good. Also, one thing that I'd love to see is some sort of new anti-hero. Since we can expect Carmelita to work alongside the Cooper gang once again, especially if the game is another time travel plot, it would be nice to have some sort of character acting as the counterweight between the Cooper gang and the bad guys. As for what kind of character this should be, probably someone with their own hidden agenda. They could cooperate with the Cooper gang on several occasions should their interests align, but they're not afraid to use more questionable methods. Basically what I'm saying is, make them a bit like Neela from Sly 2, but less with the backstabbing and behold I am the true villain of this game, and more with the ambiguous cool anti-hero shtick. And on that note, could we have Penelope redeemed somehow? I don't care how you do it, I need my adorable RC Specialist mouse back. I mean, the twist itself was already filled with bullshit writing, so why not do the same here? Actually, that was just a joke, but if you could redeem Penelope, that would be great, and I would love you guys forever and ever, even though it's probably never happening. Anyway, the final thing I'd like to see in terms of the characters is more of the gang members recruited in Sly 3. I mean, personally I would have them all playable again, but just give them more relevance than Dimitri in Sly 4 and less shit than Penelope. Hell, I don't even care if all of them won't return, just give Dimitri an actual speaking role and I think we're pretty solid. Though it would be kinda cool if Panda King came back because he used to be a part of the Fiendish Five, and if Clockwork's the villain, just saying. Alright, let's talk presentation next. In terms of the graphical style of the game, I'd like it to be a mix of the original trilogy and Thieves in Time. And by that I mean, make the animated cutscenes in the same style as the trilogy, but stick to the more smoother style of Sly 4 for pretty much everything else. Now, I wouldn't mind too much if the animated cutscenes were in the style of Sly 4 too, but personally, I just prefer the more comic-esque style the originals were going for. Then again, I'm not sure if this style of animation is somehow trademarked by Sucker Punch, since they carried this style of cutscenes over to the Infamous series, but hey, since it's only a matter of small preference, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. I mean, it's still a win-win for me since I'd still have a new Sly game to play. When it comes to the music and the sound in general, well, since they got the original voice actors to reprise their roles and the composer of the original trilogy to work on the music of Thieves in Time, I don't think having them come back would be too much out of the realm of possibility. Then again, this is my wish list, so I want them all back. However, when it comes to the soundtrack, I'd love it if Peter O'Connell could break out of the norm again. I mean, most of the time, the music in Sly games is mostly for the atmosphere, and while there are certainly quite a few great tracks throughout all the games, I wouldn't blame you if you thought the music was a bit unmemorable. But in Sly 4, even if it necessarily didn't fix the problem, themes like Whoa Camel Whoa and Tavern Tomfoolery feel a lot more lively than a majority of the tracks in the original trilogy. Now again, I wouldn't mind it that much if the music was mainly atmospheric, since that's what I'm used to and I'm fine with it, but since I know O'Connell is capable of this, it would be nice. And now, let's get to probably the most important part. How do I want my dream Sly game to play? Well, first of all, the main gameplay should be similar to the last 3 Sly games. In other words, missions scattered throughout the overworld and a safe house for buying power-ups and switching characters. Just like Mama's Sucker Punch used to make them. I mean, I don't see them suddenly going back to the gameplay style of Sly 1, but just making sure you know my preference. As for the structure of the overworlds, I'd like it to be a mix of Sly 3 and 4. Easy enough to get around as every character, but also fairly big and full of stuff to find by exploring. Basically what I'm saying is, bring back the clue bottles and the hidden treasures from Thieves in Time. But it would be nice if not all the treasures were timed like in Sly 2. Also, bring back the Master Thief challenges from Sly 3, K-Thanks Bye. The playable characters' movesets, on the other hand, can mostly stay untouched in my opinion. As long as Sly can do all the Cooper shit, Bentley can still blow stuff up and get people to sleep, and Murray can do the thunder flops, all is good in the world. But if we're getting down to nitty gritty, can I get a fucking charge attacks from Sly 3? Seriously though, these were really cool, and having the ability to upgrade them the further you went in the game made them even cooler. Just bring them back, okay? And it would be nice if Bentley could pickpocket with his fishing rod again. It was really goofy and I want it back, just please! And on the topic of power-ups, could we please get the power-up grid back? It's a really simple system, but it gave a handy access to every power-up you had and an easy way to equip and unequip them. And this might be just me, but having this dedicated menu for the power-ups and an ability to customize what you wanted to use kinda made them feel more special. Whereas in Sly 4, nearly every power-up was just press this button and you do the thing. And this is just a suggestion, but could we have more practical uses for the power-ups? For example, if you have a certain power-up for a mission, you could use some sort of alternate route to get to your objective. Now, the power-ups could be kinda used for sequence breaks in previous games to make the missions easier, but I mean more along the lines of a segment designed with the power-up in mind. And if that doesn't work, we could just use the power-ups to find stuff in the overworld. That would work too! Now, the missions themselves don't really need a huge overhaul in my opinion, but there are a few things I'd still add/change in regards to them. First of all, it'd be nice if we could visit at least some of the mission-exclusive locations when exploring the hub world, similar to Sly 2. But it would be really nice if there was an actual incentive to go back to these locations. Sly 4 had the right idea with the Sly Mask, but you could only go back for them by replaying the mission. And while I do want the mission replay feature to come back as well, it'd be nice if we could get those juicy secret things without having to play through certain missions again. Hell, you could even have secrets that are only available in that location after the mission is completed. Also, and this might be just another me thing, but could we also have more missions with pickpocketing? And as other characters than just Sly? Seriously, I can count the missions where you had to steal from the guards in Sly 3 and 4 respectively with one hand, while in Sly 2 there was pickpocketing in nearly every chapter. I'm not saying they should go for the exact same amount as Sly 2, but the pickpocketing is an important part of making you feel like a thief through the gameplay, so again, it would be nice. Next, let's talk a bit about the game's length. Personally, I'd want a Sly game somewhere between the length of Sly 2 and 3. Sly 2 is kinda too long, and Sly 3 is almost the perfect length. Ideally, I'd see it being either 6 episodes, all with their own hub worlds and missions, or 7 episodes, with the first 6 being hub world based, and the final one being either a chain of missions or one final mission. Also, if you're going to bring back the playable characters aside from the main 3, and especially if you're going to give them the ability to free roam, give them missions. Adding Carmelita as a fully playable character in Sly 4 was a neat idea, but since she has no missions of her own or any abilities to find things in the hub, it's also kinda pointless. So please, give them something to do in the overworld if you're going to give them the ability to go there. As for the bosses, I wish they can take the same approach as they did with Sly 4 and partly with Sly 1 as well, meaning that the bosses are more complicated than just hit the thing until it dies. I mean, the Sly games have made those kind of bosses work too, so I guess I wouldn't be too mad, but Sly 4's bosses are just really good, okay? If anything, they could make a mix of the two, and that would be a-okay. Second, can we get Bentley and Murray more in on the boss action too? I mean, Murray's had at least one boss of his own every time he's been playable, so I'm not too worried about him, but I need some more Bentley bosses in my life. I'm not necessarily asking for another John Bisson puzzle boss fight, but maybe something where we can still use Bentley's normal moveset and do something indirect to weaken the boss. Experiment and see what works! You know, like Bentley does. And finally, and I think this doesn't really need to be said, but I'm saying it anyway, give every villain a unique boss fight. Preferably something that reflects the villain's themes or personality, but since Grizz's skating thing came out of fucking nowhere, and he was a pretty cool boss fight, it's not mandatory. And for the love of all that is good and holy, no quick time event boss fights, because God knows how well those have worked in the past. And that's really all I have to say. Look, I know there's a very good chance that Sly Cooper no longer has a future. What with Sanzaru saying that they have no plans to continue after Thieves in Time, and Sucker Punch having left the series completely at this point. But, you know the drill, I gotta believe, hope and despair, light and darkness, blah 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 blah. I did say at the beginning of the video that if this was a hopes for Sly 5 video, I would be more realistic. But the thing is, Sly 5 in itself is also pretty unrealistic right now. And if Sly 5 and this dream game of mine could be one and the same, I would be a very happy and content man. Or maybe they'll pull out some sort of spin-off out of nowhere that fills all my desires. I don't know. Anyway, I'm FinnishDuck, and I hope you all enjoyed this new discussion type of video. And before I forget, happy belated birthday, Sly Cooper.